The government shutdown may be over, but for some, the need for food access it created hasn't gone away. Rural food pantries are getting a lift through a new grant from the Souris Valley United Way. Kiana Rivera reports on how the Glenburn community will benefit from their efforts.
Most rural food pantries are only open once a month. But longtime volunteers Andrea Boschert and Michelle Peters with Glenburn's food pantry say they're always ready.
We had someone reach out to us. We do always meet with somebody on an emergency basis.
The Souris Valley United Way began planning the Rural Food Pantry Grant program in September. Executive Director Christy Miller says the timing lined up by chance, launching during the government shutdown.
Sometimes these small communities are forgotten about, but they still have community members that are in need, whether STEP benefits are active or not.
On average, Peter says they serve a dozen families each month.
We do get a lot of military families. They need help just like anybody else, so we don't turn anybody away.
Glenburn received $2,000 from the grant.
The money is to be used for in the freezer for organization. A lot of our products come in large bulk boxes.
The volunteers are also working on putting together holiday boxes for Thanksgiving and Christmas. In Glenburn, I'm Kiana Rivera, reporting for your news leader.
The Souris Valley United Way also awarded Sherwood and Burlington food pantries totaling $8,000 across 3 towns. Miller says they still have $15,000 to award. Rural pantries interested can contact their office to schedule a visit and learn more.